Irish Media Network. We entertain.
Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to Irish Media Network Sports Update. I'm your host, as always, Joe Caulfield. Welcome to the show. Now, in this week's show, we're going to be talking to the build-up of UFC 252. It is Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic. It is the trilogy. This is about legacy. This is about history. This is why we are here. And joining me on the show today to talk not just about that, but about Sean O'Malley and Vera and everything else that's kicking off on Saturday. I'm joined by Peter Carroll of the BashMMA. Thanks so much for joining me, Peter. How are things?
Good, Joe. Thanks for having me on, man. Very excited for this weekend, of course.
I'm out of breath after that introduction, man. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, man. It's a good one. It feels like a big card. I think they've been few and far between since Fight Island and stuff like that. So this one feels like a big one in Vegas. The cards have been pretty light over the last couple of weeks, in my opinion. So this is a huge fight and a great support in that cast as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So let's start at the top of the card. It's the trilogy, man. There are two fights apiece. There's so much on the line in terms of the build up to it, in terms of fighters' preparation. So I would imagine you fight, you get beaten, you learn where was I vulnerable and how did that lead to my defeat, and what can I do to mitigate against that happening again. They've won one each, they've lost one each. Who has more to learn and improve on coming into this fight?
I think it's got to be the guy challenging for the belt, Cormier, and given that it's going to be his last fight ever, I think that's going to add so much strength to the situation for him. You want to go out on a high note. He's obviously 41 years of age, but I feel like the first fight between him and Stipe, a lot is made of that eye poke that happened just before the finish. People seem to overlook the clinch game he employed, and then punching on the way out of it, which was a fantastic tactic. He seemed to really rattle Stipe with that. But then it comes down to the body shots in the second fight then that Stipe landed. Absolutely unbelievable. We were speaking to Javier Mendez during the week on the Bash, myself and Noel McGraw, and he was saying, that's definitely something they have to work on. And I'm sure Stipe is going to be trying to keep distance and not get in those clinch situations with Cormier, because not only did he land beautiful strikes there, but if you're going to start wrestling with Cormier, there's few guys on the roster in any weight class that can really stand up to his pedigree on the mat,
Mm-hmm. In terms of that second fight, as you're saying, so DC really dominated the first 3 rounds of that fight, and it was only when Stipe changed it up and started hitting him and rocking him with those body shots that it really threw him off his game. What's he going to be able to do to negate that if Stipe employs that tactic again?
I mean, I think I'd like to see him wrestle a lot more in this fight. It's just tough because Stipe is so big. He's a good wrestler himself, but it feels like that's Cormier's bread and butter. And when you're standing and striking with Stipe, it's not just a matter of, how's it going in the first round, as we saw the last time. There was a plan B. There was probably a plan C that we didn't get to see either. So, I mean, I think that showed great wrinkles to Stipe's game. And really, I think when you're thinking about the two of them, the glaring advantage Cormier has is in the wrestling. And if you're on top of a dude, it's going to be very hard to hit him in the body. So I think that's probably the best way to go about it. But a lot easier said than done, especially when you have the power Stipe has. You know what I mean? He's slept so many lads over the years and obviously packs a huge punch. And look, he doesn't get credit for the tactician he is. You only have to look at that Ngannou fight. Had to come through absolute hell in the first round of that fight to start wrestling him, and what a unit he is, what a risk you have to take even getting that close to Ngannou. So I think that's one part of it that's very overlooked for Stipe. He's a great fighting mind, as does Cormier, but certainly in that last fight, he seemed to have a lot more tricks up his sleeve than Cormier did.
Mm-hmm. Does his reach advantage help him to kind of keep Cormier at a distance and stop him imposing that wrestling game on him?
Yeah, and even just that clinch. In that first fight, he just kept tying him up. As soon as he got out of the clinch, he was landing huge hooks, uppercuts. And I just don't think you can let Cormier touch it. I mean, don't keep him on the end of that big stick. Keep the jab in his face. And I'd be very surprised if that wasn't his tactic coming in here. Just don't let Cormier get close to him. Jab, keep moving. It's been a long time since we saw Cormier fight as well. And I mean, those months can be massively kind of. They can be really challenging for fighters in their later career. 41, that's no spring chicken to be going into a heavyweight bout. I do think it's it's a division where older men have been able to have a lot of success because they bring experience into it. But it's hard for me to say that he has more experience, more veteran know-how than Stipe based on that last fight.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something earlier as well, and it kind of ties in with that. DC has said that he's retiring after this fight, that this fight is about his legacy, that, what he didn't achieve in terms of being better than Jon Bones Jones at light heavyweight, he could be possibly considered as the greatest heavyweight of all time. It really seems like he's almost intentionally heaping the pressure on himself. And as General George Patton said, pressure makes diamonds. But a lot of people crack under that pressure. Do you think that'll be a positive or a negative for DC going into the fight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really buy into this greatest heavyweight of all time thing, really. I think they're two brilliant heavyweights, maybe the best heavyweights in the history of the UFC. But I think the UFC always do this where they pretend they are the history and the be all and end all of the sport.
Yeah,
I still think Fedor's run at heavyweight and Pride is the best run we've ever seen. The most technical in striking in terms of game plans and grappling. The things he did are absolutely phenomenal, like nearly superhuman. The way he came back against Kevin Randleman back in the day. I think it's very hard for anyone to compete with that run. But I think it's probably for the best heavyweight in the UFC history. And yeah, I think he is a guy who usually rises to the occasion. Like, I saw some people saying, like, if he doesn't win this, he'll be remembered as an early man. I don't think that for a second. I think his career is absolutely ridiculous. Without this fight, if he had just walked away after the last Stipe fight, he'd still be a legend of the sport. And people would talk about him for a long time. This small, kind of portly guy coming in and win the Strikeforce Heavyweight Championship, the UFC Heavyweight Championship, winning the Light Heavyweight Championship in the UFC too. I think he's absolutely astronomical fighter. I guess he's just such a nice guy. It's like you want to see him going out on that positive note. You want to see him kind of crown off his career in the right kind of way. But, I think Stipe's pissed off about that first fight and how it went with the eye pokes. Like, my colleague, Noel McGrath, never stops harping on about it. Oh, it changed the whole fight. And there's no doubt about it. You get poked in the eye, it does change the fight. But it is just the sport. Especially in the UFC, there's so many eye pokes because of the gloves. You can't bend your hand inside them. They allow you to stretch your hand completely like this. And you'll see it in boxing often where people are trying to engage like this. So I just think he probably is packing the pressure on himself, not only to drag the best out of himself, but to sell a fight. This is a situation where I don't feel there's a lot of hype around this. I feel like people are kind of forcing it more so than they usually would. I think it's because of the situation the world is in at the moment. But I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I still feel as though the whole Fight Island thing had way more of had way more traction in Europe and places like that than something like that. Maybe that's because the amount of European fighters are on display, but I just feel like that's just a marketing tool, to be honest. The whole
really the trilogy, the whole build up, who's the best ever,
It kind of got dragged out for too long. I feel like they should have done this a long time ago. Like, it felt like for a long time, Cormier was saying, oh, Stipe signed this, and he's saying, oh, I'm injured, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's a fight that needs to happen, but it feels like it's been drawn out a little bit for me.
And do you think, so, like, on that point, and maybe it is a marketing tool, do you think DC will retire and, regardless of what happens, will go off into the sunset?
I can't take any of these MMA fighters at their word. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They always it feels like they always go back in it. Like, I can remember the last time I was really confident somebody would walk away completely was Gustafsson in Sweden. I was like, there's no way. If he says he's done, he's done. And now he's back. Then he was back at heavyweight fighting we're doomed. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's hard because I can see how excited DC gets as well. Like, and you can't blame the lad. Like, but remember that Brock Lesnar thing? I mean, I've never seen a man more excited in my life at the prospect of fighting Brock Lesnar. And I feel like if the right fight came his way for the right money, he'll definitely do it. And the UFC love him. They clearly love the guy. He's a company guy. And if things weren't going well, they don't have Conor McGregor at the moment. They don't have, Henry Cejudo's stopped fighting. Jon Jones isn't fighting. Like, if they could somehow compel Jon Jones and Cormier to fight somehow after this for a mad amount of money.
Supervised.
Yeah, like,
heavyweight champ, light heavyweight champ. Then you could definitely say like Hall of Famers knocking
oh
it
yeah.
out.
Well, that's like, but the thing is with that as well, it's like it would have to be a heavyweight for me because the light heavyweight question has been answered twice as far like pretty emphatically. And I know people will talk about the drug test, which is definitely an asterisk put beside those fights, but I don't know if you could get the fans jumping up and down about Daniel Cormier at 41, who's probably going to weigh about 250 to 260 pounds on Friday. Fight Jone Jones at 205. It has to be a heavyweight if they're going to do that. And look, Stipe wants that fight as well. So I feel like that's definitely Jones's next move. If he's complaining about money and stuff like that, the only way he's going to get paid a substantial amount of money is to fight the heavyweight champion.
Fair enough. It was my next question was what would be next for either of those. You've answered it. My last question on this has to be, how are you calling it? Who's going to win and how is it going to end? Stoppage or decision?
I think. Like, I'd love to see Cormier win it. But
for the fairy tale aspect.
Yeah. Look, I think he deserves it too. A great finish. But Stipe is a great lad too. Just because he doesn't like speaking to the media, I can't hate on him too much. But I do think Stipe is going to stop him. Maybe in the later rounds. Like if Cormier wins, I think it will be predominantly a stand-up fight as well. I don't think it's going to go to a decision. But yeah, I just feel like Stipe is just. He's too big, and he feels like he's way more up for it than Cormier. And Cormier, I love how honest he is. He was on with my good pal Ariel there, their show on Monday, and he was saying, he was kind of saying like, 4 months ago when we started this show, I couldn't jog more than a few kilometers, and you're like, I don't think Stipe's been in a situation for the last 10 years where he couldn't jog.
Yeah. But that's the beauty about heavyweights, like.
Yeah,
all those factors are far more influential in lighter fighters. Big heavyweight, he gets a good knock on a man, lights out. Good luck.
Yeah, you're right. But I think at this level, like with Stipe and Cormier, it's wishful thinking that a big bang. Like, I mean, look at what Stipe did to Ngannou. Like, he's the biggest hardest hitting guy in the world, and he negated him perfectly. So the idea that Cormier come in and one shot stop him is. I don't see it happening. And look, I'll probably be eating these words on Saturday night.
Who knows, man? Who knows? I'm a romantic. I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm looking for the DC fairy tale finish. To be quite honest,
it'd be great.
Moving slightly on, because we were talking about kind of headline people. There's no McGregor, Henry Cejudo stepping away. One person that's going to be drawing a lot of media attention, I hope, and I couldn't imagine it not happening, is Sugar Sean O'Malley. Yeah. Man, like I'm not the type of fanatic UFC fan that will say you would be. Like, I love watching UFC, but I'm not an avid follower. I was flicking through my Instagram a couple of weeks ago and I saw Sean O'Malley fights and I was engrossed immediately. The style, the flair, this lad can drop lads quicker than on his mats. Like, he has superstar quality. Tell me a little bit about him and tell me, why is he such a mouthwatering prospect for the UFC?
Well, it's similar to the McGregor thing. I mean, you got a lad at 135 who can stop people with one shot. It's very rare. You don't generally see that in the lighter weight classes, and he's proved that he can do that a number of times. He's also unique looking. He's a very unique look, big mopper hair. As he looks like a geek almost, And then he has this amazing flair, not only in his fighting style but his personality as well.
Yeah,
and he's a star. He's 100% a star. As you said, it looks like he could be a guy who will move the needle for the UFC without the likes of Conor McGregor and Jone Jones. But this is a significant test now. This time, I think this is his toughest test he's ever had. But it's still nowhere near the top of the division. Like that's one thing that people like. Marlon Vera is a great fighter. He's very well rounded. But by beating Marlon Vera, I can't imagine anyone in the UFC has beat Marlon Vera and then got a title shot. I don't think so. I don't think that's ever happened. So I do feel like he's gonna win, but we're talking about these great stars pulling away because they aren't getting paid, and they should be getting paid more money. He's already hinting at this is going to be a future problem for him. Like, I mean, the last interview I saw with him, he said, "I'm happy to get paid when I'm getting paid until until August 16th. So he's saying like, I'm going to beat Vera, and then we're going to have to go back to the negotiation table. Now, there's no malice in that, but and he should be like that. They absolutely every fighter should be like that. They don't pay the fighters enough. They really don't. When you look at their profit margins compared to what these guys are taking home, it's terrible. And look, Sean O'Malley's saying this. What do you think it's like being an entry-level UFC fighter on 10 and 10?
Yeah.
Maybe fighting 3 times a year. What are you earning? 60 grand? Tax that, 30 grand, pay your corners, pay everyone. You're coming out with about 20 grand a year. That's ridiculous. When you're putting your body on the line like these guys do, you should be on a lot more money than that. So I completely understand these guys where they're coming from, but the UFC don't seem to understand them that well. So I can see there being future problems with O'Malley. Like, I mean, look, they can't pay the bantamweight the champion enough money. He's literally said, I'm stepping away because you can't pay me enough money. So what chances O'Malley has?
But is that a can't or a won't situation? Like, there's none so deaf as those who wish not to hear. Surely the Dana White has enough money to go around.
Oh yeah, but I mean, obviously not. Like, if Cejudo's not fighting and he's the flyweight and bantamweight champion, like, I mean, Yan's the bantamweight champion now. Cejudo wasn't defeated. Figueiredo's the flyweight champion now. Cejudo wasn't defeated. Like, that's taken away the actual lineal nature of titles. Like, that's
you're completely right.
Like, you if you're the promoter, you should be trying everything you can to get the champion to fight and defend that title, because it brings prestige to the company. So you have Yan with the title now. I'm a huge Piotr Yan fan. I've been covering that guy since before the UFC. I knew he was going to be a champion. But the question mark everyone's going to have against someone like Yan now is, well, he never bet Cejudo. How would he get on against Cejudo? And inevitably, you're going to have to bring him back for that money at some stage. But if you're not doing it right now, you're missing a big opportunity, because if this drags on for a year or so and they bring Cejudo back, people are going to say, well, is he still the same guy? And then if Yan beats him, he didn't beat the best version of Cejudo. So I think that's something that the UFC really need to look into. I know Dana White says we don't understand the game, etc., but I do understand that fighters in the biggest league in the world should be getting more money than a dude that's working at McDonald's. That's what I think anyway.
That's a fair point. Fair point, Peter. In terms of the actual fight itself, like you're talking about Marlon Vera, stylistically, it's an interesting matchup. You would imagine that the advantage is with Sean O'Malley, as in Vera has a tendency to go in like ferociously, jumping in with knees, like he's constantly on the attack. Will that suit Sean O'Malley's style to strike him and drop him?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's almost like it's not. No, I'm being unfair now. I was gonna say it's like McGregor v. Siver, but no, it's not. Marlon Vera is a really good fighter, and he has good submission skills, and he has very heavy hands. But I do think I agree with you. It's about the range that O'Malley presents with his legs. Like, he almost uses legs like a jab. You know, like, you don't come anywhere near him. It's very hard to land a hook. Like, you might be able to get a jab or a straight on him, but to come in and load up and throw a big power shot is very difficult against O'Malley. I feel like that's the way, they're trying to build this guy. They know he's a star. And they can see that in the matchup with Vera, that it's going to be very hard for Vera to get close to him. But because of Vera's reputation as a a knockout artist, as a good submission fighter, this is a huge win for O'Malley. As I said before, this is going to be the biggest name on his record. And it's going to be a great one for him to go to the negotiation table with and say, look, I'm moving into the higher echelons of this division. I'm going to be taking on contenders now. I want more money. And I'd say he's probably going to be on a lot more money than the vast majority of that division. Like the top three, all that stuff, all but the champion. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the most money in the division.
Do you think Dana will give him a couple of more fights to build his height, to build hype around this guy, to make him a McGregor-esque figure before he gives him a shot at the title? Yeah,
like, I mean, you're going to want the public screaming out for it, I think that's the way it was with Conor, and it probably happened, but there's never been anything like Conor, and there never will be again. Nothing will ever captivate the attention of the masses like he did at his peak, and I don't think it's fair to ask, to expect that of O'Malley. But I certainly think there will be a huge kind of outcry for him to fight for the title inevitably. But I really don't like that fight for him against Petr Yan. I really don't. I don't think he's ready for that just yet. That man is an absolute animal.
It'll be interesting to see if they don't give him a title shot for 2 or 3 fights, what matchups he gets between then and now that might enable him to develop a skill set to be able to fight and beat Petr Yan for the title.
Well, I mean, the fight takes place in his wheelhouse. Yan mostly fights standing up, but it's just the pressure he puts on guys. And look at the shots he was eating against Aldo and just marching forward. It's like Aldo's one of the greatest fighters ever lived, and he took his best and just kept moving forward. It was unbelievable. I'd love to see. I know Cody. I've been saying this for a long time. Cody's fighting Figueiredo for the flyweight title now. I'm interested to see how that would go. But I would love to see Garbrandt v O'Malley at bantamweight. I think that's a great fight. Regardless of what happens in the Figueiredo fight, with Garbrandt, I expect Figueiredo to win anyway. I think that's going to be a huge weight cut for Garbrandt. I'd love to see that down the line, Garbrandt facing O'Malley. And I think that would be it. If he manages to get through Vera, I think that would be a great next fight for him, to be honest.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting one. Moving down the card just a little bit, Junior Dos Santos and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That's a good one as well. It's an interesting one in that they're familiar with each other. They fight in the same gym. Rozenstruik is, pardon the pun, he's a huge striker. How will Dos Santos want to fight this? Will he take it to the mat? Will he keep it at his feet? Where is his advantage in this?
I think it's like, Jairzinho is a very well-rounded striker, but I think the thing that Dos Santos is better than maybe anyone at heavyweight is just working behind the jab. And if you don't want to let a striker like Jairzinho kind of tee off on you and use his arsenal of techniques, all you have to do is keep the jab in his face. I think that's what we're going to see Junior do. I do expect to be a very chess kind of matchup on the feet. Dos Santos just prodding away with him at the jab and Jairzinho trying to land a big shot. But as you said, I think this one applies a bit more to the one-shot power of the situation. I think Junior is a sophisticated boxer, but I think Jairzinho's power is absolute. Some of the knockouts he's scored have absolutely no wind-up on the punches. He's just touching the guys and they're falling. So that's one thing. Junior's been around a long time, and he's been in probably too many wars with the likes of Cain Velasquez and stuff to favor him in terms of durability. So anything can happen. I think Junior's the better boxer, but I just feel like that chin's been loosened up a few too many times, to be honest. So, I don't know.
We'll see. Just in terms of that fight, what's on the line for these lads? As in, if either Junior Dos Santos or Jairzinho win, what's their carrot? Who's their next fight?
I think there's still a big build for either of those guys. Jairzinho, I think, just lost to Ngannou in his last fight, and I think
he did in 20 seconds.
Yeah, I think Dos Santos has lost 2 fights in a row. Has he? Has he lost? I think he's on a streak of some kind, some type of losing streak. So I think
he lost his last. So I didn't know it was 2-0, but
it's they still need to build up quite a lot. But the thing about heavyweight is, if you get 2 wins in a row, you could be in for a title fight. So it's it's a bad division. So I don't think they'll be looking at titles just yet. And look, the heavyweight division is going to be in a weird place after whatever happens. Whatever happens on Saturday night, there is going to be a situation where either Stipe, say everything goes according to plan, Daniel Cormier wins and retires. Then they have the problem of now we have to make a title fight without Daniel Cormier, which is probably going to be Stipe and somebody else. Who that somebody else is, probably Jone Jones. And then if Stipe wins, it's probably Jone Jones again, if they can get him to fight for whatever amount of money they're trying to give him. Yeah. So then the rest of these guys are kind of in no man's land. But it's not like I don't think anyone's going to be crying out for Jairzinho or Junior to fight for the title, no matter who wins on Saturday night. So it might be just a good time to let them kind of let a true contender emerge from the rest of the division before. It's the right time to do this thing with Jones if he is going to go to heavyweight. If it doesn't happen after tonight, it's probably not going to happen, because in theory you think him moving up to fight the heavyweight champion and leaving the light heavyweight division, which he's dominated for so many years, would result in a bigger pay package. I know they were going to offer him more money, but it just wasn't the right amount of money for Jones. But maybe something like this could could get them back to the negotiation table and get them to agree something. But I certainly feel as though that's next. So unfortunately, that will bring a kind of a pause to the division, you know?
Yeah, but at the same time, it would give us some absolutely mouth-watering fights this weekend, kicking it all off. I'm going to have to leave it at that, unfortunately, because we're running out of time. Thanks so much for coming on and joining me. For anyone out there, check out the Bash MMA. It's an unbelievable podcast with yourself and Niall. Look after yourself, and sure, look, we might catch you again to discuss the possible super fight of Jone Jones and DC, possibly.
Who knows? But yeah, talking to you, Joe.
That's brilliant, man.
All the best.
Thanks a million. And that's our show for you this week, folks. Thanks a million to Peter Carroll for joining me. As I said, check out the Bash MMA podcast. Look after yourselves out there. Be good, and we'll catch you next week.
Irish Media Network.